grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. I have to confess that every time I come to this particular Sunday, the first Sunday of the new year, I have mixed emotions about it. On the one hand, I feel relief because all of Advent is done and Christmas Eve is done and everything that we have planned is over and we can finally relax a bit and enjoy the season. The other emotion that I deal with is a bit of a letdown because by the time we get to this particular Sunday, you've noticed that not so many lights are shining at night, that the lights are coming down, the decorations are coming down, and certainly by this Wednesday, which will be the day of Epiphany, the 12 days of Christmas are done, and it will be mostly over, and the darkness of this season and the cold of this season will seem more intense because it's not quite so brightly lit at night. See, for me, Christmas is a magical time of year. It is a time of life and celebration, and when those symbols of life and celebration go away, I sort of react and reject that impending cabin fever and darkness and loneliness that characterizes January. And so, even in our lives right now, we are playing with light and darkness as the decorations come down. And in the Gospel of John, John plays with these images of light and darkness as well. And he asserts that Jesus is really the light that comes from God, the light that becomes the light of the world and illumines our lives. And that's a very important insight. But as we get deeper into this text, I don't think you can help but notice that there are some parallel pieces of language in it with the creation story in the first chapter of Genesis. And indeed, if you put these two texts together, it's very interesting how the overlays seem to match each other in the progression of the story. If we go back to Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And begins with God and moves to sort of the first day of creation. And the first thing that is created is light. And it's not the light of the sun or the moon or the stars. That's the third day of creation. This is a light that seems to be of God's very essence and begins to illumine, to enlighten, to be good. And sort of imbuing through all of creation. In fact, the ancient rabbis really talk very specifically about how God poured God's self into creation. And that's what this life is all about. And then as the story of creation progresses, we get to the sixth day, which is the pinnacle of creation, the height of creation, which is us human beings, where God creates us as the height of creation, as people to take care of creation, to be stewards of creation, and as creative beings to carry on creative work with God. And if we look at John, we see the same thing going on. At the beginning of the text, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. It begins with God. And then there is this language about light coming into the world that matches what is going on in Genesis. And I think what John is trying to say is that really what is going on in Jesus, God is through Jesus pursuing a new kind of creation. And as the text unfolds, it gets again to the creation of a new people called children of light, who are supposed to be bearers of this light of Christ and take on this light of Christ and shine it into the world as Christ has already left it. And if we understand what John is trying to say, the gospel is not so much the gospel about Jesus Christ, though certainly it is, but it is also about the creation of this community, this new humanity that is a co-creator with Jesus in this new world to continue to let God's light shine in this world. And so as the decorations come down, and the rest of us sort of begin to put the Christmas decorations away and all the trimmings, the question is begged. Shouldn't we, as children of the light, keep shining that Christ candle that we lit on Christmas Eve. Even though we will shortly in this service extinguish it, do we not let that light and life continue to shine in us? And so here we are at the beginning of a new year. And of course, as Jill was talking with the kids about resolutions, we also as adults begin to think about how we resolve to live this year differently. And I would like to reframe that question into asking, how do we as a congregation, how will we as a congregation live with more life and light in our community for this year? And the first thing as I reflect on that question that hits me is the question of what we're going to do with our children and youth. I mean, right now we have to admit that we are in the midst of a huge transition. Karen Fraser Moore in her work with us began to uncover areas of our ministry with children and youth where we need to pay much more attention. Unfortunately, her cancer got to her before we could really begin to develop some strategies to deal with those gaps, and that is truly unfortunate. At our last meeting at the consistory, we decided that we were going to begin to pursue a permanent solution and go to form a search committee to search for the permanent director of children and youth. And that's fine, and that's going to take some time, but it still behooves us to begin to set the framework for what that ministry is going to look like. And I think there are at least 3 different things that we're going to have to really pay attention to as we redevelop our ministry to children and youth. And first, I think we're really going to have to pay attention to the content, what we're teaching. I don't know about you, but as a member of the clergy who's been serving for over 30 years, I have been progressively disappointed at how our religious education over the tenure of my time as a member of the clergy has been disintegrating. We need to bring that content back. I mean, we need to stop giving pat and simple answers to life's most difficult questions, like so many other people and so many other churches do. We really need to wrestle with our tradition, wrestle with the scriptures, and dig in deep, and do that with our children, so that they begin to develop that habit. I think the second thing we need to do with our kids is really begin to walk with them with authenticity within the world that they are growing up. And I know that's a very difficult thing for some of us to do. I know I grew up in a world that no longer exists. And it is an incredibly risky challenge for me to live into this world and to walk where the kids that we have are walking and deal with their issues, but we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to figure out ways to walk in fellowship with them, build those relationships, and help them build those relationships that are good and healthy and life-giving for each other. And I think the third thing we're going to have to do with our Christian education is really move in a very strong mission component. We talk a lot about letting our light shine in this community. We talk a lot about how we engage our community, how we want to be a blessing for our community. We're going to have to start that with our kids. And so I'm really going to be challenging the folks who are working with our children and youth for how we engage our youth in mission, how we help them in their lives right now make a difference in the lives of other people. So that's one thing I think that we can really focus on this year to bring more light and life to our community. The second thing that occurred to me was Martha's Kitchen. And, you know, it's a wonderful ministry. It's been going on for almost 4 years now. 4, yeah, right, because it was 1 year old when I first arrived. But to be honest, and the crickets are chirping, I think for the past year and a half, we've sort of reached a plateau there. I mean, it's a good plateau. It's a plateau where I think many people in the community truly support what is going on. As I attend occasionally on Monday nights, I see a really authentic, caring community coming out of that. And as I walk around town more and more, I run into people who come on Monday nights, and we get into conversation. And it is really gratifying to, in that conversation, find out how deeply meaningful that Monday night meal is for them. Not just the food, but the fellowship, the community, and the sense of support in which they sort of find themselves. But I think there's yet another plateau waiting for us. How can we bring more light and life to these folks? And, I'm well aware that many of the folks who come are also clients of Human Support Services, and I know that Human Support Services wants to mainstream their clients and then integrate them more into the community so that they feel productive. And I ask myself the question, how can we do that? How can we partner with Human Support Services to help that? And how can we create an environment that encourages that kind of sustainability and responsibility and giving on the part of those who come? Maybe it's time to begin asking the question for how we can have some of the folks who come on Monday night take ownership over being there. Not just come as guests, not just come to receive, but also come to give. How maybe they can serve alongside of us. Maybe in some of the setup, maybe in some of the cleanup, maybe in some of the serving of the food. And they begin through that service and working alongside of us, instead of receiving a handout, to make a difference in the lives of the people who also come on Monday night, and begin that process of them shining more light and life into the community and helping them see how they can be more giving as well. It's another challenge. Third thing I thought of is one that has impacted me very recently. I have been following Jim Hall outside of the building on Sunday mornings. And it has been an eye-opening experience, especially as I watch folks who come to park in the handicap spaces. Some of the challenges that people face just getting out of their cars and into church. I'm truly humbled when I see some of what folks go through, that they go through so much to actually come here on Sunday morning, that really speaks volumes to how important this gathering, this community, this church is to them. And I'm wondering, how can we make things easier for them? How can we really begin to think more critically about ministry to those with disability? Beyond just sort of helping them get into the parking lot. How do we, as we envision our programs, how do we, as we think about where we put programs and spacing and timing, figure out ways to make what we do more accessible to those with disability? I think that is a huge challenge that we need to begin to be leading into. And it's not just for adults. I mean, certainly we are an aging congregation. One of our members said that to me this morning on our way in, sort of chuckling, as we were dealing with getting folks in. But also for our kids. And Jim and Celinda aren't here this morning, so I might be able to speak a little bit more freely about them. But I, over the last couple of months, have gotten really up close and personal look into some of what they are dealing with young Jeremiah. And we sort of adopt Jeremiah as a bit of a mascot around the church, and I think about him and his life and what life is going to be like for him as he grows up. And there are some things that I absolutely do not want to happen around him within this community. I do not want him to continue to be a mascot. I want him to be a fully participating member of this congregation. As he grows and his needs grow, I want us to be able to wrap around that family, to wrap around Jeremiah, to make him feel as though he is a fully participating member, for us to lean around his disabilities so that his disabilities make no difference to his participation in our community. And as he grows in development, how do we do Christian education with him? How do we create a space where he is fully integrated into the classroom with the rest of the kids who are maybe a little bit more advanced intellectually or emotionally? How do we be that inclusive community? How do we support Jim and Celinda in their efforts to raise this challenging child? I think we can bring more light and life there. And if we can do it with Jeremiah, then we can do it with a lot of other kids. It's one of my dreams that we would be able to really roll out and embrace folks with disability across the spectrum, across the age group, across all sorts of symptoms, and truly make this a place where all people, no matter where they are on their journey, no matter what hinders them on their journey, a place where they are welcome, a place where they are embraced, a place where they are seen for exactly who they are, a child of God, a child of light. So as the lights go down and the decorations go away, I wonder, in this new year of 2016, how can we live with more light and life and the certainty that Christmas is every day here? God bless you.